Detroit, November 12th, 1987, 9:47 p.m. Prince stood in the rain-soaked alley behind Detroit Grand Palace, watching Jerome Washington sob into his hands. The same hands that had just played the most beautiful keyboard solo on Purple Rain that Prince had ever heard. The same hands that were now shaking with humiliation because a security guard had forced him to enter through the service entrance, while white musicians walked through the front doors like royalty. Prince's purple suit was getting soaked, but he didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched his friend, his musical brother, break apart in a dirty alley while 85,000 fans inside the arena screamed his name. This was supposed to be the biggest night of Prince's career, a live television broadcast reaching 50 million homes across America, the concert that would cement his place as the undisputed king of pop. Instead, he was watching everything he believed in crumble in the space between two doors. "Jerome," Prince said quietly, his voice barely audible over the Detroit rain. "Look at me." Jerome lifted his head. His eyes were red, not just from crying, but from something deeper, something that went all the way back to childhood in Minneapolis, where he'd been told 1,000 times he wasn't good enough, wasn't clean enough, wasn't white enough to belong in certain spaces. Tonight, in 1987, at the height of Prince's fame, he was being told the same thing. "I'm sorry, Prince," Jerome whispered. "I should have just used their door. I shouldn't have made a scene. The show starts in 13 minutes and I—" "Stop!" Prince's voice cut through the rain like a blade. "You have nothing to apologize for." Prince turned toward the venue, his face hardening into something that would have been familiar to anyone who'd seen him negotiate record deals or fire band members. Cold, calculating, dangerous. "Where's Richard Sterling?" To understand what happened next, you need to understand what had brought them to this moment. Prince had built his empire on one unshakable principle. Talent was the only thing that mattered. Not color, not connections, not politics. When he'd put together his band for the Purple Rain Tour, he'd chosen the best musicians he could find. Jerome Washington on keyboards and saxophone, Marcus Thompson on bass, David Chen on drums. They happened to be black, Asian, and mixed race. But Prince didn't see color when he heard them play. He saw genius. The music industry in 1987 was different. MTV had only recently started playing videos by black artists, and only after Michael Jackson and Prince had essentially forced their hand by becoming too big to ignore. Radio stations still had unofficial quotas. Venues still had policies, and men like Richard Sterling still ran venues like Detroit Grand Palace with rules that belonged in a different century. Sterling was old money. His family had built their fortune on real estate and entertainment venues across the Midwest. Detroit Grand Palace was his crown jewel, an 85,000-seat arena that hosted the biggest names in music. He was worth an estimated $50 million, and he ran his venues like private kingdoms where his word was law. Earlier that evening, Prince's tour buses had arrived at Detroit Grand Palace at exactly 6 p.m., 3 hours before showtime. The venue was already buzzing with excitement. This wasn't just any concert. This was being broadcast live on HBO and MTV simultaneously, reaching an estimated 50 million homes across America. The Purple Rain movie had made Prince a global superstar, and this Detroit show was being positioned as his victory lap. Prince traveled with 12 musicians, his complete touring band. 7 were white, 5 were black and Asian. They'd been together for 3 years, touring the world, recording albums, becoming a musical family. To Prince, there was no distinction between them. They were his revolution, his musical army, his chosen family. The band members got off the bus ahead of him, carrying their instruments and equipment toward the entrance. That's when they met James Harrison, head of venue security. Harrison was a thick-built man in his 50s with a kind of Southern accent that hadn't been softened by decades in Detroit. He looked at the approaching musicians and immediately separated them into 2 groups with his eyes. "Hold up there," Harrison called out as the band approached the door marked Artist Entrance. "Y'all need to sort yourselves out here." Jerome Washington, leading the group with his keyboard case, stopped. "We're Prince's band. We're on the list." Harrison looked at his clipboard, then back at the musicians. "Oh, I know who you are, but we got procedures here. You white boys come on through this door. You others need to head around to the service entrance. The words hung in the air like poison. Marcus Thompson, who'd been carrying his bass guitar, set it down slowly. David Chen's drumstick slipped from his hand. Jerome just stared, processing what he'd just heard. "Excuse me," said Tommy Peterson, Prince's lead guitarist and the only white member of the group standing there. "We're all together. We're all in Prince's band." "I understand that," Harrison said with the practiced patience of a man who'd had this conversation before. "But this is Detroit Grand Palace, and we have certain standards to maintain. The service entrance leads to the same backstage area. It's not a problem." "It is a problem," Marcus said quietly. "We're professionals. We're here to perform for 85,000 people. We should be able to walk through the same door as everyone else." Harrison's expression hardened. "Son, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. Mr. Sterling has been very clear about the policies at this venue. Now you can use the appropriate entrance, or you can find somewhere else to play tonight." The white musicians in the group moved closer to their black and Asian bandmates. This wasn't just about Jerome, Marcus, and David. This was about the integrity of everything Prince had built. "We're not separating," Tommy said firmly. "We go in together or we don't go in at all." That's when Richard Sterling appeared. He emerged from the venue like a man stepping onto his own stage, wearing a $1,000 suit and a smile that had been practiced in boardrooms and country club dining rooms. Sterling had built his fortune by understanding people's pressure points, and he immediately sensed an opportunity to control the situation. "Gentlemen, what seems to be the problem?" Harrison gestured toward the band. "Mr. Sterling, these are Prince's musicians. I was explaining our entrance policies." Sterling's eyes moved across the group. "Ah, yes, Prince's famous integrated band. Look, boys, this doesn't have to be complicated. We have a service entrance that leads directly backstage. Some of our biggest stars prefer it." Jerome stepped forward. "Mr. Sterling, we'd like to use the same entrance as everyone else. We're all part of the same band." Sterling's laugh was gentle, condescending. "Of course you are. But Detroit Grand Palace has certain traditions. The service entrance is perfectly adequate." "But separate," David said quietly. "Practical," Sterling corrected. "We have relationships to maintain. Sponsors, investors, with certain expectations. Surely you understand." Marcus looked directly into Sterling's eyes. "You're asking us to accept being treated as second-class citizens." Sterling's mask slipped. "I'm asking you to be reasonable. Prince is being paid $2 million. The broadcast rights are worth $5 million. We're talking about not disrupting a carefully managed event by treating human beings differently based on skin color," Jerome said. What Sterling didn't understand was that Prince had finished his call and heard the conversation. He stepped off the bus and surveyed the scene. His band members stood divided, not by choice but by circumstance. "What's the problem?" Prince asked quietly. Sterling immediately moved to control the narrative. "Prince, we were explaining entrance procedures. Nothing major, just logistics." Prince looked at Jerome, saw the humiliation in his friend's eyes, and understood everything. "What procedures?" Sterling gestured broadly. "We have different entrances for different personnel. It helps maintain security." Prince's voice remained quiet, but something in his tone made Sterling's smile falter. "Show me these entrances." Sterling led Prince around the building, pointing out the main artist entrance with red carpet and professional lighting, then the service entrance in the back alley, next to dumpsters. "Both entrances lead to the same backstage area," Sterling said. "Really just practical logistics." Prince stood in the alley looking at the service door. When he spoke, his words were measured. "You want my black musicians to enter through the service door, next to garbage, while my white musicians use the red carpet entrance." Sterling pressed forward. "I want everyone to use the most appropriate entrance. This is how we've always done things." Prince turned to face Sterling directly. Rain had started again. "Here's how this works," Prince said. "Either all of my musicians use the same entrance, or nobody performs tonight." Sterling's confident demeanor cracked. "Prince, let's be reasonable. We have 85,000 people in that arena. Live television broadcast, HBO, MTV, 50 million viewers. You can't seriously be considering canceling over this?" Prince's smile was dangerous. "Watch me." Sterling stared at Prince, trying to determine if this was a bluff. Prince owned his masters, controlled his publishing, answered to no one. The contracts are signed, Sterling said carefully. Legal obligations. The financial penalties alone. I have enough money, Prince said simply. Sterling tried a different approach. Think about your band members. You'd be costing them the biggest paycheck of their careers. Prince turned to Jerome, Marcus, and David. Do you want to play under these conditions? The three men understood the weight of the moment. Jerome spoke first. No, sir, not like this. Marcus nodded. We stand together. David simply shook his head. Sterling was becoming desperate. You're throwing away millions over a symbolic gesture. It doesn't change anything meaningful. Prince's voice hardened. It changes everything meaningful. For 20 minutes, Sterling made frantic phone calls. Prince's manager tried to negotiate. Record label executives tried to reason. Everyone had the same message. Find a compromise, save the show. But Prince had made his decision. Sterling made one final attempt. Let's handle this quietly. Your different musicians can use the main entrance during a shift change. No cameras, no publicity. Prince looked at Sterling like he was speaking a foreign language. They're not different musicians. They're my musicians. They don't sneak in anywhere. They walk through the same door I walk through because they earned that right. Sterling's composure cracked completely. You're destroying a $50 million event because of your political agenda. Prince stepped closer to Sterling. When he spoke, his voice was so quiet that Sterling had to lean in. I'm not making a statement. I'm revealing who you really are. Then Prince spoke the 6 words that ended Richard Sterling's career. We're done here. Cancel the show. The aftermath was immediate and catastrophic. Within an hour, news crews were setting up outside Detroit Grand Palace. The story spread across America faster than anyone could have anticipated. Prince cancels sold-out concert, walks away from millions, because venue enforced segregated entrances. Sterling tried to control the narrative, releasing statements about misunderstandings and unfortunate miscommunications. But the truth was already spreading. Some of the venue staff had overheard the confrontation and were talking to reporters. Video footage emerged of the 2 entrances, the red carpet main entrance and the service door by the dumpsters. The story became a symbol. This was 1987, not 1957, and yet here was proof that the old systems of discrimination were still operating in America's entertainment industry. Prince became a hero to some, a troublemaker to others, but everyone was talking. Sterling filed lawsuits demanding the full contract amount plus damages. Prince's legal team countered that contracts requiring participation in discriminatory practices were void. The case dragged through courts for 2 years. During the trial, shocking evidence emerged about Sterling's business practices. Internal memos revealed systematic discrimination policies across all his venues. Communications with booking agents showed explicit instructions about maintaining appropriate racial balances at events. The lawsuit became a public relations nightmare that exposed decades of institutional racism in the entertainment industry. Sterling lost more than the court case. Sponsors dropped him. Artists refused to book his venues. Investors pulled out. Within 3 years, Detroit Grand Palace was bankrupt. Sterling's entertainment empire collapsed, and he lost an estimated $40 million. Prince, meanwhile, implemented a new policy. Every venue contract now included a specific clause. All performers, crew, and staff must use the same entrances, facilities, and accommodations regardless of race. Any violation would result in immediate cancellation without penalty. Some venues refused to sign such contracts. Prince never performed there, walking away from millions in potential revenue over the years. Jerome Washington stayed with Prince for another 12 years, eventually becoming his musical director. In a 1999 interview, he reflected on that night in Detroit. People ask if it was worth it, losing all that money and disappointing all those fans. But Prince taught me something that night that I'll never forget. He showed me that dignity isn't negotiable, that when someone with power stands up for someone without it, that's when real change happens. I've never forgotten what it felt like to have somebody fight for my right to walk through the same door as everyone else. Richard Sterling died in 2003, still bitter about his confrontation with Prince. but his legacy lived on in the precedent that night established. Other artists began including similar non-discrimination clauses. The entertainment industry was forced to confront policies everyone knew existed, but no one discussed. Prince never spoke extensively about Detroit Grand Palace in interviews. When reporters asked, he would simply say, "I work with the best people I can find. I don't care what they look like, and I won't work anywhere that treats them as less than they are." In 2016, after Prince's death, Jerome Washington spoke at his memorial service. Prince didn't just change music, he said, voice breaking. He changed how musicians were treated. That night in Detroit, he walked away from the biggest paycheck of his career because he refused to let his friends be humiliated. That's the Prince I'll remember. The story of Detroit Grand Palace became legendary in the music industry, a reminder that real change often requires sacrificing something valuable for something more important. Prince had chosen dignity over dollars, principle over profit, and changed an industry forever. Today, writers in major recording contracts routinely include non-discrimination clauses that trace their origins back to that rainy night in Detroit, when Prince said 6 words that cost him millions but changed everything. "We're done here. Cancel the show." What would you sacrifice to stand up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves? Have you ever walked away from something valuable because it compromised your principles? Hit that subscribe button if this story reminded you that some prices are too high to pay, no matter how much money's involved. Share this with someone who needs to remember that integrity isn't about what you do when people are watching. It's about what you do when no one would blame you for looking the other way. Next time someone asks you to compromise your values for profit, remember Prince in that Detroit alley, choosing his friends over his fortune, and proving that the most expensive thing you can lose isn't money, it's your soul.